Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. This morning I want to make some sweet potato fries because I'm thinking about making some fish sandwiches tonight, which is my favorite. But the sweet potato fries are so good. They're so simple, and I have to think ahead because once you peel your sweet potatoes and slice them up, you have to soak them. You got to get all that starch out. Did you know that a sweet potato is actually not a potato, but it is related to the morning glory? So it's basically a morning glory vine with something yummy growing at the root of it. So nonetheless, I've been planting sweet potato slips this morning, and I got to thinking about it. I thought, ooh, sweet potato fries would be so good. So go with me as we make some sweet potato fries, and I'm going to make some dipping sauce out of Sriracha that's not too spicy, but it's the perfect accompaniment to these fries, and it's super easy to make too. So go with us. Okay, so here's all our sliced sweet potatoes, and I tried to slice them as uniformly as I could, but as you can see, some of them are a little bit wider than the other ones, but the thinner you slice them, the more thoroughly they're going to cook through in a shorter amount of time. So we're going to just let these sit. All this is just water. It's just tap water, and it's cool, and make sure they're completely covered with the water, and we're going to let these sit for several hours. Then we'll come back, we'll rinse them off, and then we'll finish up our sweet potato fries. Okay, we are back, and let's see, it's been about 3.5 hours. 12, 2, 3, yeah, it's been about 3.5, 4 hours since we started soaking our sweet potatoes. So what I'm going to do at this point is run them through a colander to rinse all that starch off. See, this is how much starch is in the bottom of that bowl. That's a lot of starch in a sweet potato. Going to give them a good rinse. All right, I'm going to take a bowl and we're going to put about 2 to 3 tablespoons of cornstarch in there. Now, organic is a little hard to find in our area. You may not have a problem finding it, but it's not as easy here. So I do use this. This is a non-GMO cornstarch, and that's a good one to use. So just know that there's a lot of corn out there that is genetically modified, so that's why I at least use that safety factor. I'm just going to eyeball this. This recipe normally calls for about 2 sweet potatoes, but I used 3 just because I wanted more, because we're having somebody come over tonight and eat with us, and I didn't want to run out. But it says 2 to 3 tablespoons of cornstarch if you're using 2 sweet potatoes, but since I used 3, it might take a little bit more, but we'll see. So we'll take this and just start dropping these in there, shaking them around. Some of these are actually pretty big. Look at that right there. So you could cut these with a mandolin and cut them really thin if you want to. Those would be perfectly fine. You could cut them in spiral cuts if you want to, but these are going to need to lay on a baking sheet. So I've got 2 large baking sheets laid out. These are just sheet pans. But you do not want to crowd them. You don't want them touching. You don't want to crowd them. So that's going to be the time factor here. The thing that's taking up the most time is just placing these on the baking sheet. And this is what they look like. I want to make sure I have enough cornstarch on them. Looks like maybe there's a part over here that could use a little bit more. But there's no seasoning on these at all, except for the cornstarch. Okay, so you can see from right there, they're pretty much covered in cornstarch. Okay, we're going to go over here to the island and place these on the baking sheet now. All right, these are my buns that I'm baking because we're having fish sandwiches. So I'm going to place those in the oven. They have to bake at 350 anyway. So we'll just use that 350 for baking 2 things because it's warm outside and I don't want to heat the kitchen up any more than I have to. And these require a large baking sheet or else I'd be cooking them in the little tiny oven out in the sunroom. Okay, get your olive oil or just a good quality oil on your baking sheet. I'm going to get a pastry brush and just spread this around a little bit. You want enough on there where the cornstarch can absorb the oil to kind of fry these in the oven, if you will. That's in essence what they're doing. But you don't want so much that it's just swimming in it. Okay, we'll put that brush aside and we'll just start laying these out on here. And again, try not to have them touch. It's like fitting a puzzle together. If there's a choice, like this one is kind of flat, so it's wider than it is tall, set it on that skinny edge and it takes up less room. on the baking sheet, and it didn't seem like it would make that big of a deal, but when you get like 100 of these lined up, it makes a big difference if you have room or not. So just place them on the skinny side. I think it's going to take at least 2 baking sheets, but I'm not sure. You can save the short ones like this for putting in between the rows, I should say. Okay, let's get another baking sheet, put our oil on it. Once we place these in the oven, we'll make our dipping sauce, and we can just refrigerate it until we're ready to serve it. We're just having one friend over tonight, and she's over a lot, so it's not like I don't want to be cooking when she walks in. She knows I cook. It's not a secret. But sometimes if you're having a larger group over and you don't want to be still cooking when people walk in, these are very easily made ahead of time. And you just keep them on your baking pan and pop the pan back in the oven to reheat them right before it's time to serve them. So that's a hack that I can appreciate, because if anything can be cooked ahead of time, that is what I'm going to choose every single time. I forgot to look at the time when I put my rolls in there. I normally cook those for about 20 minutes, but a lot of times, it's funny, it's kind of like magic. After you've made bread for so long, the second that you start smelling the bread means you need to check and see if it's ready. I don't know how that works like that every single time, but it really and truly does. This is what I mean by putting the puzzle together. You put the small ones on there, and then you put a big one at the other end to compensate for the length difference. It does take up a lot of baking sheets, but let me tell you, these are worth it. These are so good. Unless you hate sweet potatoes. And if my daughter's watching, I am talking to you. She is not a lover of sweet potatoes, so I just eat all the ones that are designated for her. Not that she didn't have to eat them when she was younger. She just knew that she had to eat those first before she enjoyed anything else, because otherwise she would just sit through the whole meal dreading it. I don't know why she doesn't like sweet potatoes any more than what she does, but she just doesn't. Kind of like I don't like coffee. And I know that comes as a shock to a lot of people. They think I'm from another planet because I don't love coffee. Okay, let me check my recipe one more time and make sure I have everything on here. Yep. Okay, so we're going to bake these for 15 minutes. Then we're going to take them out of the oven, put them on hot pads, and kind of gently flip these over. Just take a spatula and flip them over. At that point, they could probably get away with touching, just not the first baking time. So 15 minutes in the oven. And I've got 2 more additional racks in here to put these on, so everything can fit nicely. All right, set the timer for 15 minutes, And then when we come back, we'll be turning them over. Okay, so this is what they look like right now. You can hear them sizzling. And I'm going to take and flip these over. Yet another time-consuming part. Oh, I better get a spatula type thing. Yeah, once they get to this point, just flip them over, but it doesn't really matter if they touch. It's better if they don't, but it's not going to mess them up if they touch. See if I can get this a little closer to the camera. I was reserving this area to make our sauce with, but this has to be done first. That's all the cornstarch coming off of it. Spread them around. So at this point, we're going to pop these back in the oven, and my recipe says, in my handwriting, says bake them for another 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 5, but if they don't look like they're done, I'm just going to leave them in there to cook for another 5. So let's pop them back in the oven. At this point, we'll turn our rolls around so they can bake evenly on both sides. And they look like they could use about another 5 minutes or so. So we'll set our timer for 5, and then we will make our sauce real quick. So at this point, I have measured out a ½ cup of mayonnaise. This is my homemade mayonnaise. This is made with avocado oil, but use what your favorite is. Just don't make the mistake of using something sweet like salad dressing. I won't mention any names, but you know what I'm talking about. It's white. It looks like mayonnaise. It's kind of like a miracle that they could get it in that jar, but I'm just not going to mention any names. but you need something without that sweet taste to it. Growing up, I thought it was all the same thing. I just had no idea. I didn't like either one of them, but I just thought they were the same. Okay, to this we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. That's what this looks like. And 1 teaspoon of Sriracha. Now, I know you're probably thinking that's not Sriracha. It actually is. This is a kind that we buy because it doesn't have any sugar in it, but you're welcome to use whatever kind of Sriracha that you have. Chances are it is in a red bottle, and it's the one that most people buy. So, let me check again. Yep, 1 teaspoon. And that is all the ingredients for this dip. That couldn't have been easier, almost. Just give it a stir, and we're going to transfer it to a bowl that has a lid on it. This keeps for a pretty long time in the refrigerator too. So you could make this up plenty ahead of time. And if you have extra left, just use it the next time you make sweet potato fries. You know me, I got to get every speck of it off the spatula and the bowl I mix it in. Okay, we're good for right now. We're going to put this in the fridge. We'll come back when our sweet potato fries are done, and I'll show you what they look like. Okay, so I'm going to take out one pan at a time. This is what the fries look like. The reason I'm taking them out, I've actually added 10 more minutes to it because I said that my recipe said bake for another 5 to 10 minutes. So I baked another 10 minutes at 5. They just didn't look as done as what I wanted them to. So I've taken them out at 10 minutes now, and I'm going to let the other one bake while I'm doing this. But the nice thing about it is our dinner guest will be here in about an hour, and my husband will be home from work, but I will put these back in a hot oven just to sit in this pan, so they'll just keep baking, so not a big deal. I'm also going to sprinkle a little bit of salt over this, just in case nobody wants the sauce with it. It'll still have a little bit of that salty sweet taste to it. These are really nice sweet potatoes. These are organic sweet potatoes, and I think it was like a 3-pound bag, and I can get them at our big store in town. I can also get them, I can buy them in bulk, just each individual sweet potatoes at our local Good Measure Market, but I just happened to pick these up at the big store when I was there. Okay, give this a little sprinkling of salt, not a whole lot. Oopsie, one's trying to escape. These would make a really good appetizer for people to munch on while they're waiting for a dinner to get ready. If you have dinner guests and you want to make these way ahead of time and then just keep them warm until your guests get there. These are so fun. Serve them in little cups. You can just do all kinds of things with sweet potato fries. All right, we'll get our other pan out of the oven. I'm going to turn the oven off at this point. Put another sprinkling of salt on there. I don't know if you caught it in the introduction or not, but the reason I thought about making these was I was planting sweet potato slips this morning and just thinking about sweet potatoes, and I thought, oh, sweet potatoes would be so good. So that's what we're having with our fish sandwiches tonight. And I got my sweet potato slips planted, and I'm so excited because I've never grown sweet potatoes before last year, but they actually did pretty well, and I was absolutely not knowing what in the world I was doing because my family never grew sweet potatoes in the garden. That's just not one of our things. We grew okra and purple hull peas and tomatoes and onions and things like that, but potatoes weren't really our thing. You just buy those at the store. So we never grew them in the garden. But when I attempted to make them last year, they grew, and they were so good. I mean, the flavor of them was just fabulous. I was so excited to be able to grow them again, so I learned how to grow slips. Zoe, quit scratching. I learned how to grow the slips from the potatoes that I had left from last year, and so that turned out really, really nice. I was so pleased with them, so I was excited to give that a try again this year, and I think I have about 5 times as many as what I did last year. And again, I just grow things in a cow tub. I don't have any garden space to speak of at my house. Our yard gets treated by a lawn company, and I don't care anything about eating what they put on our lawn. So, all right, we're going to put these back in the oven and let them stay warm and actually continue to cook until our dinner guests get here. So I hope you've enjoyed this. The recipe will be in the description of the video, but we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye, guys. Okay, sorry for the disclaimer here. This is the next morning. We served the sweet potato fries last night, and although they were fabulously delicious and the dip just topped it off, it was just really a neat treat. But I got the wrong temperature on the oven, so go to the recipe. The oven temperature should be at 450. And I kept wondering, why aren't these crisping up? Did I buy the wrong kind of sweet potatoes? I mean, is that a thing? I don't even know. But I should have just cooked them at a higher temperature, so wasn't messed up. They were still delicious. They were just a little floppy. But if you cook them at the right temperature, which is shown in the recipe, you will get a crisper sweet potato fry. But take my word for it. They were delicious. Everybody loved them. And hope you enjoy everything. Thanks. Bye.